Hey folks, well, I just wanted to go through and give a very brief bit of introductory discussion of the project for the course. We'll get into this in much more detail going through the different labs. Again, if you go to the main course page and hit the project resources, you'll find a full blurb talking about what the project involves this semester. Now, the project is going to be very closely interrelated with the labs. So we'll find that as the labs go on, each of the different lab exercises we carry out has something to do with the project. And so again, the labs and the project are very closely interrelated. All right, so let me just get rid of my talking head. Again, for the project, in lab 1, you're going to be going through and cloning, forking and cloning the Git repository that I've set up for the project. So it's got some starter code in it, not much. It's got a starter man page in it, not much. Again, these are both just very basic skeletons. So when you're going through lab 1, you'll be forking and cloning the project repository. And once you've got that, if you do an ls, you'll see again that there's a simple makefile set up. There's a man1 directory that's got a skeletal man file in it. Actually, once you've compiled it in as part of lab 1, you'll have the project executable, a starting.cpp file, and again, if you have a look in the project.cpp file, you'll see it's just a glorified hello world at the moment, a header file for it. The object file there got created by the makefile. I don't think there's anything interesting in the README. So it's just a very basic setup in the beginning for the repository. And as the semester goes along, I'll be making updates to the central repository and getting you to pull changes for those and obtain copies of the updated versions of the lab or of the project and incorporating any changes that I make in your project code and in documentation that we'll produce as the semester goes along and in the man page. So you're going to be keeping this up to date. And again, as the project goes along, you're going to be designing, implementing, and testing your project code. The labs are going to do things like, this first lab is doing the original forking and cloning and doing some Git experimentation with the project repository. It's setting up a man page, the help page for the project. In the next labs, we might be doing some design work, so some preliminary designs of the solution you envisage for your solution to the project. Later on, we'll start getting you to do development on different pieces of the project. So again, lab by lab, you're going to be adding to the project code. You're going to be writing bash scripts to support things like testing of the project and things like the Git management of the project. You're going to be using the debuggers and profilers to work on the project. You'll be updating the structure of the repository. So right now it's just got everything lumped into one big directory other than that man subdirectory. So you're going to be putting a more coherent structure and updating the makefile appropriately, moving all the files around and getting things corrected to deal with that. Again, you're going to be writing scripts for test automation and creating test cases and applying those and summarizing the results. So there's all sorts of things that you're going to be doing in the labs as we work our way along. Now, there are a collection of code standards for the project detailing all sorts of different things, from the development environment that you're using and again, standards on the version control. My expectations for what you're going to do in terms of version control for this. If you make a huge number of different changes in the project and then one big commit, then you're going to lose marks. So do make sure that you're going through reading the standards and understanding the processes that I want followed as part of the standards in addition to the basic code standards. So again, standards in terms of the quality of the code with respect to compilation and execution, the use of warning flags, having clean compilation, attribution of other people's work, error checking, sanitization, output standards. Again, there's all sorts of specs on what I expect your code to look like. And again, standards for the make files, standards for documentation, standards for bash, the bash scripts you write, standards for the C++ code that you write, standards that are kind of general to all of them. So I do want you to go through this because I will be marking for code quality for the project. And that includes the labs that we do along the way. So review the code standards. For the project overview, again, this is basically a glorified simulation of people using elevators in a building. So I want you to go through the specs that are there now in order to create that man page for Lab 1, that help page for Lab 1 that's giving folks an introduction to how to use the program correctly and what it does for you. And we'll update this as the semester goes along. So there's already we've spotted a couple of holes and ambiguities in the specifications that will be clarifying in the future lab releases. So for each lab, you're going to be going through the process of pulling any changes that I've made, incorporating them in the work that you've done so far, and then completing whatever the exercises for the lab itself happen to be. All right, I think that was pretty much everything I wanted to summarize for the moment. Again, obviously we'll be talking about this in the labs themselves as the semester goes along.